Expect me. Welcome to the resistance.
Welcome to the resistance. Let's get ready to Yo, there's no good and evil. There is only power in those too weak to seek it. Sometimes the wicked will tell us things just to confuse us, to haunt our thoughts long after we face them. Feel me? Feel me! Yo, I hope the real love and truth are stronger in the end than any evil or misfortune in this world. Yo, people couldn't become truly holy, he said, unless they also had the opportunity to be definitively wicked. Think about it, yo. Yo, goodness is something chosen. When a man or woman cannot choose, they cease to become a human. Yo. Second Amendment rights. What's up? The rifle itself has no moral stature, since it has no will of its own. Naturally, it may be used by evil men for evil purposes, but there are more good men than evil. And while the latter cannot be persuaded to the path of righteousness by propaganda, they can certainly be corrected by good men with rifles. Yo, I believe you find such a problem because you think there are good people and bad people. You are dead wrong, of course. There are always and only the bad people, but some of them are on the opposite sides. You dig? Yo. There is no denying there is evil in the world, but the light will always conquer the darkness. Yo, there was only one guy in the whole damn Bible Yeshua ever personally promised a place with him in paradise. Not Peter, not Paul, not any of those guys. He was a convicted thief being executed. So don't knock the guys on death row. Maybe they know something you don't. You're self-righteous. Whatever. Yo, Christians, to see evil and call it good mocks God. Worse, it makes goodness meaningless. A word without meaning is an abomination. For when the word passes beyond understanding, The very thing the word stands for passes out of the world and cannot be recalled. Poor God, he often, very often he's blamed for all the suffering in the world. It's like praising Satan for allowing all the good that happens. You were like me. You were a child, a growing child, a normal child, and that was taken from you. Does that bother you? Well, it certainly makes you harder to hate.
Everyone. So this is a mob, and there are clear, godfathers, and we've named the top ones over and over again for years, and there's no disputing it. Over and over and over again, we've told this, and what we say is like, okay, anybody benefiting from this system, they're guilty of treason. If you vote, you're guilty of treason. If you're a millionaire or a billionaire or a lawyer or a judge or a cop, all of you out there are guilty of treason, because all the corporate government does is wage war against the body of the people. And the body of the people is specific to certain genetic codes. It means you have to have a claim to be the King of England or related to the King of England in order to be considered one of the people. And that doesn't mean just folks who are not white, but ruddy, like King David and King Solomon and King Fulk and King Edward I and myself. We're not just saying exclusively that, we're opening that up. But at the time when this country was founded, the body of the people meant that. It didn't mean you were a land-owning male. That didn't have anything to do with it. And it's time to restore the natural order. This mockery that they call a royal family in England, they are Khazarian. They're infested with this criminal synagogue of Satan bloodline that it says in the Bible. This is the synagogue of Satan. Those who say they are Jews but are not, they are Khazars.
Right.
And right. Well,
exactly.
It's right, and it's also verified by anybody who knows anything about genetics. The smoking gun for the Khazarian link and the Q haplogroup. And then we can go back, and the fact that these guys don't have any claim because the founding female lines of the Khazarian, Ashkenazi, so-called Jew are all European. But that's not the case with 80% of English men, 90% of Irish and Scottish men, 60% of French and German men that are all related to the Levantine region. And this is, according to all public records, because they're directly related to King Tutankhamun, according to the genetic testing that's available to the public. So what folks get out there in the mainstream media, I would say, is better than what folks get from the alternative media, because this stuff here, I don't hear many other folks talking about it, but everybody should be talking about it. I wasn't talking about it 20 years ago when I first started, getting into exposing the criminal system. When I started saying, like, hey, these elections, they're rigged, and they're telling everybody on TV. You have to read the writing on the wall, but it's all rigged, and they say everything's based on voting, and your vote doesn't really count, so you really don't have any voice. But then I didn't know anything back there, but I knew enough to know that voting was an absolute joke. And then everything I've learned since then, it's verified. I don't care whether persons believe me or not. I don't, when somebody's like, well, hey, Chris, you got to convince me of this, or you got to convince me of that. No, I don't.
You have to
I don't
convince yourself.
anybody.
Yeah, that's Damian Maynard, by the way. I didn't introduce you guys at the start of the show. He's a longtime Sentinel, and Damian, Chris Damian.
Hi, how are you? Pleasure to meet
Thank
you.
Fired up is what he is.
Well, he should be, because this government that we put in power, well, that we didn't put in power, but originally was put in power for the people, has taken over and has become a monarchy, if you will, and they run everything, and they control the people by, as Chris said earlier, the threat of force against them. So the threat of force, the threat of imprisonment.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's not the threat. It is actual violence. It is violence. For example, I live in Henrico County, Virginia. It's a suburb of Richmond, Virginia, and there were police that broke into a woman's house who they were doing a wellness check. They broke into this woman's house, broke down her bedroom door, and shot her in her own bathroom. And now they're
yes.
And so it's not just the threat of force, it is the overt force. It is tens of thousands of individuals who have been killed by the police for nothing other than, being a target of assassination. And I am a monarchist. This is not government through monarchy. This is government through organized crime mobs. That's what this is.
Yes.
I don't believe in illegitimate monarchy like the Khazarian bloodline so-called Windsors, who's the queen, the so-called queen's grandfather was a court Jew named Frederick Bloom in the court of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, who was the true father of the so-called Prince Andrew, not Prince Andrew. What was that? Prince Philip, I believe, of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, the husband of Queen Victoria. So that's the order of what we have. The common law. The king is the highest authority in the common law, and that is the basis of all of our government. So
yes.
I don't have any problem with legitimate monarchy, because I have that blood flowing through my veins. I have a problem with the Khazarian mafia that has usurped authority and is engaging in war against us. And I am eager to smite them and take a page out of my ancestor Edward I's book by issuing another edict of expulsion, which is what Edward I did when he couldn't stop the so-called Jews, the Khazarians, those who say they are Jews but are not, the synagogue of Satan,
yep.
from carrying out usury, from kidnapping Christian children and sacrificing them, and from clipping and sweating coins. So in 1290 there was the edict of expulsion, and that's the only solution. And before that happened, he took the 300 wealthiest so-called Jews and executed them. Now, we're not saying that the blood test is the way to do it here, but we're saying, okay, take the 300 richest people on the planet Earth because they are engaged in treason, which is a capital crime, and execute them. There's no other solutions. I hear every day folks talk about all the problems, but there's only one solution. It's the militia solution. And that's the body of the people controlling the weapons of war.
Well, most people wouldn't believe or listen to the fact that we are still ruled by the British Crown. And
but we're not ruled by a legitimate British Crown. So I don't, the problem is not British people, because that's what we are. That's what founded America, in British, Scottish, Irish, English, Welsh, Cornish.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a descendant from Richard III, so I totally understand where you're coming from.
Well, yeah, good. So what we're saying is that a small group have extorted everyone, especially in the modern times, through the nuclear weapons invented by Oppenheimer, as one of the folks in the chat is saying, and then spread out through all the world by this one small tribal ethnic group. And then what? They create a criminal state. The Rothschild family themselves creates the state of Israel. If folks don't believe it, I don't care what people believe or what they don't believe. If they don't believe what I say, they don't believe what the truth is. If anybody can find this stuff out. Right. And then they have extorted everyone, not only through their nation state, but through their mafia combination with their nation state. And they control Russia, they control China, they control the United States, and they control everywhere. And Vladimir Putin, he's a Chabad Lubavitch puppet as well. Mm-hmm. And so we go back to a time when Prince Oleg defeated the Khazars in the late 9th century and early 10th century, and that's what started this ruckus. And these Chabad Lubavitchers, they wish to restore this Khazarian empire, and they've already got it. They got the whole world. Yep. But it's just that easy to just say, okay, execute all millionaires and billionaires, because anybody who stands by the system.
That's pretty extreme. All millionaires and billionaires.
But let's suss this out then. Why is that extreme?
Well, millionaires, because there's a lot of self-made millionaires that have nothing to do with that.
No. Everybody who's a millionaire is engaged in usury, and my law book, the Bible says that the only thing that happens to a usurer is debt. It says that many times in the Bible. You know, hath thou lent forth money with interest? Shall he then live? No, he shall surely die. He has done all.
And because you spoke about the Bible. You spoke about the Bible, and you can trace the Khazarian Mafia, which, let's call it what it is. It's the largest organized crime syndicate, right? And it's been around forever. And it started out back in the Babylonian money magic time, when the money changers, they talked about that too. And it's completely been exercised. It's gone from all history books. I mean, these guys have spent a ton of money having history completely erased from history books to prevent citizens to actually learn this evil that's beyond your imagination. That's what my intro is about. It's about the secret covenant of
right.
But the Khazarian Mafia.
Millionaires are benefiting from this.
Right.
They're benefiting from this most evil thing. And you know what? Here's what I always say when folks go, whoa, that's a little too extreme. Any millionaire stole that money. No millionaire earned money. No millionaire did anything but collect usury. And I can tell you this: I'm not saying like let's go out and actually kill all millionaires, but it's more like this. Hey, you are committing treason. The punishment for treason is death. Your treason is whatever crimes you committed, whoever you stole money from, to hoard it for yourself. So better give up your money, buddy. So again, you know what? If the punishment for, that's like saying, whoa, it's a little extreme to say, life in prison or the death penalty for murderers.
For the Khazarian Mafia, for sure. I'd like to see life in prison. That would be excellent, because you know what? To have to sit in a freaking tiny little cell for the rest of their life. Well, it'd be just fitting to go from owning the world to owning a world the size of your bathroom. I've always fantasized about watching the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers, the Clintons, or some of these evil people actually having to sit in a cell for the rest of their lives.
So they're killing people. They're trying to kill the whole planet, except for their little thing. So this angle right. of okay, they have these weapons, biological and conventional, nuclear, etc., and they can wipe out as much as they wish to. Now there's debate on all life or not. Right.
Do you see that coming? That they're going to head to the bunkers and we see a lot of doomsday preppers saying that this is what's going to happen.
That's what I'm getting to. That's
Okay.
what I'm getting to. Okay. So we know that. And we're being blamed. Americans are being blamed for, we're the most warlike. We've got the biggest nuclear arsenal. All the other countries, they have underground bunkers.
Israel's got more.
For their people. But the United States
government,
true? I mean, Russia does. North Korea
they
does.
drills.
According to public reports, Switzerland does.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
So, and I'm not in any of those places. I'm here in America, and the possibility exists. There's been a lot of saber rattling over the years. I'm not just talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm talking about, there have been thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons, quote unquote, tested and used since their inception.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, what if they just dropped bombs and it wasn't nuclear and it didn't wipe everything out? Do we have underground bunkers? Are there any sort of plans? We're told that it can happen anytime.
An EMP, certainly.
But these other countries do. So what does it seem like the plan is? Why are these UN vehicles in my hometown of Hagerstown, Maryland? And they're not just ambulances. They're armored military vehicles. So what's their plan? If they
saw
don't
this
have
happening
a plan to use these nuclear weapons, then why do they have these underground bunkers for themselves?
We saw this coming years ago too, like 4 or 5 years ago when they really started heavily militarizing the police departments, giving them what do they need frickin' these armored military vehicles for? And the Kazarian Mafia, they've been waging a war against America for a long time, and they use what's called the false flag Gladio style terrorism, and they do it via the illegal, unconstitutional Federal Reserve System, the IRS, the FBI, FEMA, Homeland Security, in the newly formed TSA after, of course, the Gladio style false flag attack on America on 9/11. Plus, and what was the other one? The Murrah building bombing back in the 90s. That was also certainly them. Plus, tons of other things since then.
Everything, every single thing. Not one thing that they report on is legitimate or truthful. There might be elements of truth in everything that they report, but nothing they report is anything but an obfuscation, not to inform, but to manipulate, not to reassure, but to wage war against. And this,
that's one of the staples to learn. There's Zion. It's right in the book that they're going to control all the media. They're going to control all the currency. They're going to control all the medicine. They control, and they do control it all.
Exactly.
Right. So what other choice is there? The choice is go into a gunfight with a piece of paper to shield you, or to carry out what must be done. And I can tell you, I did want to talk about this because I kind of set this up saying, like, I don't pay any attention to any alternative media. I watch the mainstream media and analyze their obfuscation and deception for myself, because I can tell you, I don't trust any source.
I'm glad you said that. I think Damien can agree that a lot of the alternative media, there's so much. What is alternative media anymore? There's so many different sectors, so many different people, so much dis and misinformation. And a lot of them aren't really educating you. The ones that crack me up, they come along every couple of years and they get really big for a while, and they recycle the same old garbage that the MP's coming next week. And that FEMA said, you got to have 6 months of food and water. They recycle the same old stuff over and over again. I think that the point is that we don't really know if or when it's going to happen. I think that their plan involves a lot more than that. It involves, first of all, what they're doing with the West Coast, since 50% of it's owned by the federal government, which is completely illegal. But all they have to do is plop a monument on there and say that 20 miles is ours, which is forts and ports.
But all of it is theirs. But all of it is theirs.
So they want to put us on the little tiny cities, little tiny freaking cities.
There are people that think it's all theirs.
It is.
We're better.
The house I'm in is not my house,
right?
Because I don't. If I stop paying them their proper extortion fees, they will take it in an instant. It is theirs. Nobody owns anything like the government owns your houses. I'm talking to everybody. You don't own anything like the government owns your most valuable property. You're the manager who pays for the maintenance of the, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying everyone. Everyone is the maintainer of the government's property, and everyone spends all of their money to maintain the government's property. And again,
I was just talking about this a couple of days ago to my mother-in-law, and we were talking about how why can't you make a payment, you know, like a payment plan to pay your taxes every year. And I said, well, that's because if they don't get all those millions and millions of dollars at the end of the year, then they can't stack it in their bank account and get all the interest off of it at once. So that's why they make everyone pay all their taxes at the end of the year. And it's a large lump sum because they collect all that from all of the people, stack it up in their bank account, and make $1 million of interest on it.
They make every single one of the rules. So every single thing that they do is going to benefit them and inconvenience everyone else, the body of the people, anyone under a millionaire or anyone under the top 25% of wage earners. You know, because again, I'm not even scared to just lower it down and say anybody engaged in usury is guilty of treason. That's what I'm talking about with this edict of expulsion of King Edward I in 1290. It was at the end of the day because usury was making slaves out of the English lords and earls and dukes. So it was enslaving everyone through that system because the Jews, they are subjects only of the king in a feudal system, because you know the king, you know, in certain times in English history and in European history, they wanted all that tax money that the Jews, you know, created. But then they started losing everything, and so they realized, hey, the only way to get rid of this problem is the edict of expulsion, because they didn't even stop after 300 of them got executed several years before the edict of expulsion. So they're not going to stop. It's in their blood. Usury is in their blood. It's the synagogue of Satan. And we have established them. And all this stuff about quote unquote anti-Semitism. Semitism has to be of the Levant region. It's mostly associated with languages from you know, the cradle of civilization, the Levant, the so-called Holy Land, whatever anybody wants to call it. But these folks, they don't have anything to do with that. And what I'm saying is nothing is going to stop them. Not one thing, except for expulsion and execution.
And certainly there's many millionaires out there that are ignorant to the facts that you were talking about, and that they're more accomplices than actually, you know, because I mean, I guess ignorance isn't really a huge excuse, but there's lots of people that don't know the facts that you're putting out there, and that's why
don't know that other people are suffering and living like I wouldn't even allow animals to live while they're
But there's some who try to do the right thing. I think putting a blanket statement on all millionaires. Now, when you get up to the billionaire ranges,
I've been making this blanket statement for
years,
and I'll never back down from it.
What about somebody who like opened their own business though and built it up to you know, $1 million business? They're not aware of these.
Exactly what I'm talking about. Nobody legitimate, no good man or woman is gonna start from nothing and become a millionaire. It's not gonna happen, because you have to support this criminal system in such a overt and exclusive way, meaning exclusively, you've got to serve Satan in order to gather $1 million.
Right, and the more money that you make, the more money that you have to pay to these people. So say you have, say you make $60,000 a year. Okay, well, you're going to pay a certain amount of tax. Well, when you go over $100,000 a year, your taxes get upped. So you're never going to make it to that level legitimately.
Yeah, you're never going to make it to, exactly. You're never going to become a millionaire legitimately. It's never, ever going to happen. You're going to get some sort of insider trader information that's not available to the rest of us, or you're going to be born into a certain situation where, you know, you've been set up. You're going to be you're going to maybe have blackmail material, you know, available to be used against you. So they're going like, hey, this guy will do anything we want. Let's make him a millionaire. Because in the system, every individual is subsidiary to the individual who makes more money or has more close access to setting the interest rates, or owns the bank, or has the vaults, you know, the key to the vaults. Whatever it is, we've established, you know, what I'm not saying like whatever it is, because those are the things, and we've established who that is. But I can say with 100% certainty, there are no good millionaires out there. There are no good cops. There are no good lawyers. There are no good judges. There are no good FBI agents. There are no good anything. Unless you're fighting against every single one of those things, you're not a good human being in my estimation. And that is my
working for the tyrannical system.
But when you talk about the Kazarian mafia now, they're many of these people that you're talking about, millionaires in particular, they're not doing what, you know, drinking blood and bleeding people out and doing the occult ceremonies,
right. They're the
and worshiping damn owl. You know, they could take out the entire freaking Bohemian Grove for all I care. I mean, these are the black magic, satanic, hybrid religion people, man. The Babylonian Talmudism, the horrible people, the baby killers. But I'm going to disagree with you guys when it comes to all of them, because I don't think many of them are aware that are on the local level.
What I'm saying is, one cannot become a millionaire without being a complete servant to this system that they set up. Usury is worse than the individual crimes of child prostitution or blood drinking or murder or ritual murder or destroying the environment, because it encompasses all of those things in one. Usury encompasses all of those things in one, and one cannot become a millionaire without being masterful at usury. So how
do you avoid using it? Like, how would you pay your bills or be able to put gas in your car or whatever? How do you do it?
Okay. So here's something, any other way except for the way it's done now. So by that question, you say well, you got to have a money system that's made up out of nothing. I mean, we have so much money now. Like, the money that I have is worth more than the 1,000 acres that my fifth great grandfather had granted to him in the state of Maryland. But what? You think that guy would rather have my money or his land? If you have land, you don't need money. I can tell you, if the people had the land and the possessions and the gold that they had now, we wouldn't need any money.
That's true. I totally agree, because you could grow your own food and you could trade and barter, and there would be no monetary system anymore.
But here's what I'm saying. When we're paying bills, we're paying the people who we're talking about are enslaving us. Every single time we pay a bill, we're paying the people.
Well, that's what I'm saying. How do you get it yourself?
In control of these things. Why do I have to pay for free water that's coming from the river?
Well, okay, let's say electricity. Do you get electricity bill? How does your electricity stay on? Do you do solar?
I mean, obviously, we have to pay to live in this system, but pay who? Are we saying
right.
oh,
you're saying you're paying into the system
about power companies, and all you have to do is look out in California, but it's right here. Look at what we're paying for. We're paying for, in Virginia, a nuclear power plant that's built on a fault line of an active earthquake
there's several.
that was damaged and is leaking tritium into our water supply, which is killing everyone. So that's what we're paying our bills for. Do you think that's necessary?
I guess what I'm saying is by that law, we should all probably be executed then, because we're all paying into the system.
No, it's not my choice. I actually went to Nuclear Regulatory Commission meetings and was confronting these folks for the fact that they were getting all A+ ratings, even though they're operating a nuclear power plant that is leaking tritium that was damaged by an earthquake into the water supply. That's 3 times the EPA standards. So what I'm saying is, I'm not responsible. I say, yeah, I know who's responsible. But when we say, like, hey, this stuff exists, do you think the bill paying is like one of those machines that you stick dollar bills into, and that the electricity will not operate without this piece of paper going into it? Electricity works whether people pay bills or not. So what I'm saying is, these folks, maybe they get land for their work. Maybe they get food for their work, or maybe they go, hey, you guys know how to run this nuclear power plant. Hey, keep showing up every day, and you won't be receiving a paycheck anymore, but you'll stay alive if you keep this power plant running. And I can tell you that may sound harsh, but that's why you and every one of the other listeners, and myself included, do anything in this society. Would you ever stop for a police officer if the end result might not be, you being put into a cage or being killed? Would you listen to anything that they said? Would you do anything the government said if death was not the ultimate punishment given to them, to you? I wouldn't do any of it.
And they do. They own everything. And that's how it keeps filtering in. You want to put gas in your car? They own all the gas stations. Check out the gas stations. Next time you're driving past a bunch of gas stations, look at the signs. Look at they're all Saturn symbols on gas stations. I mean, it's insane how much, and it all goes back to this Babylonian magic that started way back in the day.
And also, what I'm saying is that, okay, everybody has to pay bills, but we live in a time where they tell us that the economy is doing great, but yet they still have to cut interest rates and get it down so very close to 0% interest because they can't operate. And even within this system, it's the largest gap between the rich and the poor in my lifetime, and I presume we all look about the same age, all of our lifetimes. The largest gap between the rich and the poor in modern history of the United States of America, and then they tell us the economy's good. The economy's horrible. So any sort of bill paying would have to be completely put on its head, or there would have to be a 180-degree switch in the way that bills are paid. And again, what is a bill? Who invented a bill? Did they have bills?
Babylonian money magic. That if for the little history, I'm sure you already know this, Chris, but they substituted paper certificates for gold and silver deposits, and that allowed, you can travel with your money in that form, and they offered easy replacement even if they lose certificates or have them stolen, and then they flip the script.
And you said it. It's all magic. It's all black magic. Everything is black magic. They go, I'm in charge. Oh, why are you in charge? Oh, because we're God's chosen people, and that's our land. And this, that's our land too. Oh, and we're so persecuted. Oh, who persecuted you? other Jews as part of a trick, and we weren't really all that persecuted, but we're persecuted. So give us all the money, or we control all the money. No, that's not how it works. And again, anybody of any background. So we're not just targeting the obvious, son of Satan, the synagogue of Satan. Yeah, anybody who's doing well, anybody who works for the government. The government is 100% garbage. And I can tell you guys why I'm worked up, because I don't like to look at stuff, but when I'm on Facebook and Skype and all this other stuff, or Twitter, it's hard to avoid it. But I saw an article about the United States military using quote unquote rape dogs to torture people.
Say what? What you talking about, Willis? Rape dogs.
Right? Yeah.
Wowzers. That does not shock me.
Rape prisoners in Iraq and Afghanistan.
What? That's wow.
Well, what's worse, they were raping children in front of their mothers, and now it's just another disgusting level that I didn't need to know about in order to say, yeah, everybody in the connected to the United States government under the law. And I'm not saying that's what I want to have happen, just see all these dead people. I'm just saying, if the law were to ever be enforced, and I'm talking about the law for treason, every single millionaire, every single corporate and government official would be executed.
Where would you cut that off, though? Would you like what if you were like 900,000 you made a year, or 500,000? Would you? I mean, I just think the penalties should fit the crime, and the ones at the top of the ladder, they're the ones.
Are you familiar with the treaties on government?
With what?
So it says, and that's the basis of a lot of the basis of the genre of English common law.
What was that? What was it called again, Chris?
Two treaties, or second treaties on government, by John Locke.
No, I mean very little. Please, yeah, please,
okay.
Please.
So John Locke, inside the second treatise on government, Bible based on the King James Bible, he says, okay, any person who tries to rob you by force or steal money from you, you have the right and the duty to kill them. Because if they'll steal your money and property by force, and they take you into their control, nothing will stop them from taking everything from you, especially your life. And in this system, when not all lives can be spared, sparing the life or protecting the life of the innocent goes above all else. So when you say somebody, it's just relative to me. So when you say, what about 500,000? Yeah, he should be executed before the guy who makes 499,000. Okay, you're right, because he stole more than the guy who makes 499,000. Well, what about the guy who makes, who has 4 billion? Oh yeah, he's definitely before the guy who makes 499,000, because he's definitely less innocent. It's very simple to me.
Right. It's just to me, it just sounds ludicrous to execute 19 million or so people for. I mean, I think a lot of them are unwilling.
But I think, Eric, you just are not listening to what I'm saying, because once their ill-gotten gains are given back to the rightful owners, then they're no longer millionaires, right?
And with that, we're going to break. We'll be back in 2 and 2 with Chris Dorsey. See you on the other side.
I don't know if I'm muted or not, but I will mute myself.
Oh,
And we are back live on Revolution Radio with Chris Dorsey, and we are talking about one of my favorite subjects. Studied very heavily into the history of the Khazarian Mafia. These were the Bowers, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the usual suspects. And I mean, they took over the European banking and the City of London banking system. They did all kinds of crazy stuff. Like they made the false report that Napoleon won against the British when he actually lost, and that helped the Rothschilds to steal a whole lot of money. And then they set up this private fiat banking system that specialized in making counterfeit money from nothing, and as Chris was saying, charging usury for the British people for what was their own money. And this is the black art of Babylonian money magic. Completely. And once they infiltrated everything, we get what we have now, which is a world run by freaking psychopaths. The Khazarian Mafia, they hate anyone who professes any faith into God. Their God's Baal. He's motivated. They murder kings and royalty all through. They've done it with presidents. They did it to McKinley, Lincoln, JFK. Absolutely. Anyone who dare resist their Babylonian money magic power, or to try to convert their power to anything else but themselves. What do you think, gentlemen? Let's
I believe that they did kill. I believe that they did kill them, but I don't believe that Lincoln or Kennedy or McKinley got in their way. I don't believe anyone reaches
Not Lincoln,
that point.
even okay. Share that.
Well, I mean, I believe that Lincoln clearly did more to destroy the common law system of our ancestors. That, you know, when you take away, you know, modern comforts and amenities, the system that we live under now is much worse than the pre-Civil War system. The pre-Civil War system, black people owned slaves, black people fought for the Confederacy. There was slavery, which I don't believe in any form, but it went from enslaving some to enslaving all through the 13th and 14th Amendment, making every individual a subject to this slave system that they call the United States of America Corporation. And I believe that Lincoln, by doing something that not even the kings of England or the kings of Europe could do, and that's destroy habeas corpus, he did that right off the bat. And I also believe that he was an ethnic Khazarian himself. And from what some people say, it seems his name wasn't necessarily Abraham Lincoln either. But in any event, I believe, and I would love to see genetic testing, that this man, regardless of what his ethnic background was, he certainly was not any sort of hero, and Kennedy was mobbed up, you know, generations back. So
why do you think they offed him?
What's that?
Why do you think they they assassinated him, or why do you think they offed him ultimately? Or you don't believe the official story, right?
Well, I don't believe any of the official stories.
It was Oswald, who also worked for the CIA. But
well, if
you
they
don't believe
did
that, right?
If they did, it could be for any reason, including sometimes you just got to off somebody who's in charge to let everybody else know who's really in charge.
Sure, but you don't believe the lone gunman story, do you? I've done a lot of research on how he.
Okay. I've been around a long time, and
sure.
I've disagreed sitting at dinner with Vincent Bugliosi, you know, who wrote a 2,000-page book about the lone gunman theory. It's absurd, and I told him it was absurd. And we were working together, you know, working against the Bush administration at the time. And I can tell you another thing that makes my experience exclusive, because I've had, in simple terms, it explained to me by folks like Lieutenant Colonel Robert Bowman, face to face, drinking beer, hanging out, what the weaponization of space is really all about. And it's so simple. It is absolutely so simple, and it can be used in every sort of mixed match. It can be compartmentalized in any different way anyone wishes, but the ability to bypass mutual assured destruction is the only purpose for any sort of strategic defense initiative or weaponizing space for defensive purposes, which means it's always an offensive move. If you take away deterrent power, that's an offensive move. If you can remove deterrent power only one place in the world, and it's from one of these underground bases, and I wrote about this in my book, the Militia Handbook. There's underground bases in every city and state, in every industrialized country in the world, including the United States. And they have the ability, through technology that I've had explained to me by its inventor, to take away the deterrent capability of nuclear weapons. I see my mom was watching this. She knows Lieutenant Colonel Bowman as well. One has to be a dum-dum not to be able to comprehend these war game theories. Everything is a zero-sum game, and everything is game theory. So, and when you get to the most important things, it becomes the most simple. Like, hey, if you're in control of the Bank for International Settlements, and you're a part of that operation, you're the lender of last resort. Oh, the Federal Reserve Bank and the Bank of Russia, the Bank of China, they did this. It doesn't matter what they do, because the Bank for International Settlements tells all of those banks what to do. It doesn't matter that the Bank of Israel and the Federal Reserve Bank are bad and they got bad guys running it. It doesn't matter, because the Bank for International Settlements, they control all of that stuff.
And not to, I just want to backtrack real quick to Lieutenant Colonel Bowman. The first time I had come in contact with what he had done is he had exposed remember the big Star Wars program?
Yeah, on 60 Minutes.
Out there where it was supposed to be for defensive purposes. And when he looked it over, he found out it was for offensive purposes. And that's why got nixed.
That's right.
That's
exactly it. That's 100% it. And he told America that on 60 Minutes.
Right.
So and it really is pretty obvious. But another thing he went into.
Where are the Cronkites, by the way, these days?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
where are those type of reporters? Where'd they go?
I think just things have gotten worse. I think that Cronkite was in on a lot of this CIA stuff himself, but that the American society hadn't degraded itself so much
to that degree
that he had to, they had to go a little farther than, say, Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or any of the other talking heads that are quote unquote news. News. He
never had his nose disappear. Got out on his knees and in the flood water to make it look like the flow is deeper. It's different breed of.
It's all absurd. And I'll tell you another thing about Robert Bowman. When we met, Robert Bowman and I were both members of the Democratic Party, and we were both, I would say, liberal members of the Democratic Party. And what he told to me, he said, Chris, you have got to start a militia. That is what you have to do. And I was a locally known member of the Democratic Party at that point, and an activist, locally known, and a business owner. And so I know about these things when I say, hey, nobody is in business who does legitimate good business. Nobody stays in business who does legitimate good business. They will run you out of business if you say the wrong thing. They will smash your windows down and pretend that it's just some random vandalism or random robbery. But getting back to this, getting back to Bowman, he said, you got to do this. I didn't even own a gun at that point. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I know. I wasn't, I'm with you on that. But the only hope for America is the militia. And what the militia means is the body of the people controlling the weapons of war.
By the way, we have Jarrow1 in here, Chris. He says, Chris is very passionate, but he never swears. No profanity comes from his mouth, which is very beneficial on Revolution Radio because it's FCC regulated. So we can talk about anything. We just never swear. Right. So that came from Jarrow1. Right.
I operate under parliamentary rules. So that's the way I operate. And what I'm saying, whether folks can do this in the Secret Service and the FBI, they always harass me. But what I'm speaking is lawful. I'm speaking more about the law than what they are. And everything I'm saying is accurate and lawful. And when I'm saying these millionaires and billionaires, they've got to be executed, I'm saying, okay, give up your money and then you won't be a millionaire. Or do you want us to like execute you lawfully and then take your money anyways? You'll be in a better position. Just give up your money, because anybody making any money, and I'll challenge anybody, show me a millionaire that's done any bit of good on this earth, but compulsively grab for themselves. And I won't believe it, even if you tell me, but I don't believe anybody can come up with one.
I'll study a little more, but we'll agree to disagree on that one. We have a question for you in the chat room.
I appreciate it, and like you, Eric, but it doesn't matter if anybody who disagrees with me, I don't care.
Well, it's great to be able to learn other viewpoints, and disagreeing is how you learn things. I've always felt.
That is
It's
very,
really
that is
boring
very
watching these
true.
shows with people just circle jerking each other and just, oh, I totally agree with that. Let me tell you how. I mean, it makes for a boring show too.
Well, here's the way I would look at it is like I can agree to disagree if somebody prefers like vanilla vegan ice cream to chocolate vegan ice cream. That's what I can agree to disagree about. Or if somebody likes a certain kind of music and another person likes another, that. But when I'm talking about things to do with the government, I don't believe that folks have really thought it through on certain levels and said, okay, let's look back on history when things have gotten this bad before, and what must we do? What does the law demand, and what is the source of the law? I.e., John Locke, Second Treatise on Government. When these folks are robbing you, and when you're robbed of money, it's not like it's just like, oh, that's money. All right, well, I'll go back to my house. Doesn't matter they stole all my money. I'll just go back to my house and watch my TV and eat my food and hang out. They'll take all that stuff if you don't have any money. Without money, one cannot live. So when they're taking your money,
there's more millionaires now than there
they're
were
robbing
back then,
you of your life.
I'm just saying. Well, we have a question for you, Chris. It says it requires great conviction. If you were an elite, what would you do knowing the masses wanted to destroy the illusion?
Well, what is an elite? I make my claims as, and I'm making them lots. I'm the Grand Master of all Freemasonry. I am the leader of all secret societies, and I study all of their operations. Nobody has made any claims against that. That all comes from blood. So my genetics and my genealogy, it's public. So if anyone wants to,
but if you were, I think what he's saying is if you were actually one of them,
I mean, it's a great question. I would do everything that they're doing. If I wanted to be 100% duplicitous,
it's running smooth, going just fine. And
right.
I would say at the start of that question, knowing the masses want to destroy the illusion, in my opinion, there's not enough of the masses that really do want to destroy the illusion.
No, exactly.
That's
exactly. It's a non-starter answer. And this is another thing I wish to make clear. I don't wish to have anything to do with the public either. I have disdain for the public. The public have made themselves slaves, which is fine. The public will always be slaves. But then they're the only thing that can enslave the non-slave. They're the only ones that can enslave or attempt to make subject the rulers, the true rulers, on behalf of this Khazarian mafia. I have disgust and contempt for the public. Not that I wish them any ill, not that I wish to do anything but protect them, as the Bible says for the shepherd to do. The good shepherd protects the flock, but it doesn't mean that I'm not here to wake up the masses. The masses aren't listening to this. The masses wouldn't even comprehend the first 5 minutes of what we were talking about because they're too warped. They're too warped. It's like I talk to people, even family members, and I start explaining something to them. Then they'll disagree, and then I'll explain more, and then they say, "Oh, sweating coins? I've never heard of that. Sweating coins? Does that exist? How do you sweat a coin? Clipping coins? What is that? Coin clipping, coin sweating. That's ultimately one of the main things that the Edict of Expulsion was about. The so-called Jews were clipping coins, and so I attempt to explain that." And then it becomes an argument about every single thing that I'm explaining instead of going, oh, clipping coins. Or what does that mean? It means shaving coins, whatever you mean, taking tiny amounts from massive amounts of coin and stockpiling it together. But that's not how, because the masses won't do that. If somebody says something that I don't comprehend or I don't even understand, I'm not going to keep asking them, are you sure that's a thing? Are you sure? Explain how that works. I'm going to look it up myself so I have a better comprehension. They don't want to learn this stuff. They just want to take the truth that's uncomfortable for them and try to use their weak brain power in order to refute it.
And that's why I love broadcasting on Revolution Radio, because we go out to potential 1 million people in the Midwest on AM radio still, and people that come in the chat room. These are the people that do want to hear this and do want to try to make a change. Spartan says the language right in front of us, i.e., we elect the government. We should be selecting the government. That's a good comment too, Spartan.
Well, let's get into this because the Constitution for the United States has nothing to do with does not contain anything at all about mass voting. It doesn't go like, okay, every 4 years this, every 2 years that, and everybody gets the vote, and then this and that and the other thing. Voting is a joke. If you vote for your own slavery. And what they're doing through voting is they're attempting to take away our God-given rights. So at the end of the day, anything that's actually important between God, man, and the earth can never be manipulated, taken away, or be granted, I should say, through voting. Voting is just an absurdity. That means, and I tell this to folks, a lot of folks in my family are ardent Democrats. And I tell them, you know what? When you vote for somebody against Donald Trump, you're voting for Donald Trump. If you vote for one candidate, you're voting for all the candidates, especially the winner, because you are voting in a rigged system by which everything is okay. It's like written off. It's like, well, they voted for this.
Well, it's been obscenely made to be rigged because of modern technology. They no longer have to count them by hand. It's done by computers. It's so easy to rig now. It's just become even easier.
Right. We just had an election in Virginia, and it was a fairly important election. And I think there's going to be more of an open gun grab agenda. Not that the Republicans oppose the gun grab agenda. It's just in order to keep the myth alive, you have to switch, leadership in the so-called Virginia government from Republican to Democrat in order to keep the narrative running smoothly. But here in Virginia, we had an unusual election, and right after the polls closed, the results that were being updated shut down. The entire computer system for the Virginia Board of Elections shut down, and it didn't come back on for another 2 hours. And when it came back on, and this is just from news reports, and I'm talking to someone who has filed a election fraud way back in 2012 against all the election officials in Richmond and Richmond City and the state of Virginia, which is the capital, is Richmond. So I know all these folks, and took them to federal court. And this was back in 2012 for, among other things, 15,000 votes just within the city of Richmond appearing as 0 votes. So that means 6 precincts voted all day long with 2,000 voters coming through their precincts, and then 8 days after the election, 0, even though they've already called all the elections. So getting back to this year, 2019, at 7 p.m., election day, just a couple weeks ago, the computer system shut down. The electronic computer system shut down. The results then 2 hours later came back on, and we're told by the Board of Elections and the media that wrong results started coming in. And then 20 minutes later, after it shut down again, after the wrong results came back in, then the right results came back in, and everything's cool. And here are the results. I mean, and that's exactly what happened. I've made videos on this subject. Fox News is looking at my LinkedIn page. I guess they're 6 different folks from Fox News were watching this information, I guess, to see whether I was some sort of, partisan Republican who had some good points about election fraud.
Some right-wing extremists.
Right.
Right.
But the thing is, I know what it's all about. And if the Republicans got their script and it said gun grab, then they would grab the guns too. They follow orders. And this fits in with this Epstein and Jimmy Savile thing. These guys are child rapists. They like to rape children, and they'll do anything. And the other sick thing that's going on with this, you know, Prince Andrew, fake Prince Andrew, the so-called Prince Andrew, the Khazarian Jew, and Jeffrey Epstein, is this child rape blackmail ring by the Mossad and Robert Maxwell and Ghislaine Maxwell and all the other folks.
What's that book, by the way, that we heard about, you know, that we were supposed to freaking find out about? Yeah, that was right after the Epstein funeral. Did you see the Epstein funeral?
I did not. No.
Yeah, right. None of us did, because it never happened. We never got to see that. And the black book is just all that's kind of disappeared now. Now it's the
that's the other thing.
Turn to the impeachment.
Yeah, it really annoys me. It really annoys me because I was talking about that black book 4 years ago, and I went on Press TV, and basically they asked me a question about something, and I just say whatever I want, even if it doesn't have anything, which it always has something to do with the question. And years ago, exposing on international television and saying, hey, look, they say that Trump is controlled by the Russian government and sometimes even the Russian mob. But that's just a euphemism. This is the so-called Jewish or Khazarian mob. And a lot of these guys are, you know, compromised or making billions of dollars through gambling, prostitution, racketeering, which includes child prostitution, which is their most valuable racket. And so I said, hey, and guess what? Both presidents are compromised in the same child rape ring. And I'm saying this years ago, saying, how can anybody buy this? And now what this Epstein thing has become, it has become a joke. It's become a late night talk show punchline. So I'm not watching all the stuff I'm watching what the public is watching. And what they're doing is they're making this acceptable. Yeah, you know, I mean, maybe Donald Trump likes, you know, 13-year-olds, he likes to rape sex slaves. Hey, they're joking about it on Comedy Central, so it must be not that big of a deal. You know, they've gotten away with 9/11. They've gotten away with this child rape ring where it's like, hey, if you look into this for 5 minutes, you'll know that Israel and elements of the United States government are 100% culpable for this 9/11 attack. And one has to be an absolute dumb moron to think anything about hijackers and Osama bin Laden has anything to do with reality. And again, you have to be a dumb idiot. I knew 15
but
years
there still
ago,
are a lot of people who do believe that story. Crazy amounts.
Right. And their opinions are meaningless. Their opinions are less than meaningless.
And we watched Alex Jones flip-flop on that.
Well, Alex Jones is another individual I know. And you know, another thing I talked to Bowman about. And Alex Jones is, and I mean, God bless him, but that guy, he has a cocaine and alcohol problem. And I don't know that just by watching him, and any idiot who watches him on screen can go, yeah, that guy's on something. What is it? Cocaine?
Super male vitality.
Yeah, right. Good one. It's not that. Unless that's a new euphemism for yayo. But that's it. You can't, you know, when we start outing these
Israelis dancing Arabs with him, he flip flopped like that.
You know, it's really funny. I appeared on InfoWars a couple times when several times they would take my interviews from Press TV and just paste it on Infowars.com. But during the 2012 Bilderberg meeting, I really laid into the Bilderberg members, and nobody else did. Alex Jones did his stuff like that, but he didn't go at the cops. He didn't go at anyone else. And I had sharp words with Mark Scholdice, aka Mark Dice, and what are those Canadian guys that say they're pressed for truth? And what was that other guy that he and his wife now have the separate thing? And this guy actually told me, hey, we're not going to let you talk on air, even though you are one of the main organizers of Occupy Bilderberg. And I'm like, no, you're going to let me talk on air. You cuss too much. And we put out there.
Talking about Aaron Dykes?
Dykes. Yeah.
Aaron and Melissa
he and I had
Dykes.
a little exchange. All it took was a stern look from him going like, no, you're not going on air. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And then he quickly said, okay.
Well, Aaron and Melissa Dykes parted ways with him, right? And started their own thing.
Yeah, that's their trick. That's their little trick. That's the Adam Green trick. Because obviously, you know, the Alex Jones whole entire shtick, it can't go anymore. And I'll tell you, he's also changed his shtick. He's acting much crazier than he did 15 years ago. I mean, wouldn't everybody agree to that?
For sure, on air antics, absolutely, but actually getting out there and doing those antics, he's not really doing them much anymore. But now he's in a freaking brand new like Humvee. Did you see that with the bullhorn? It's like, man, that's like it's like you're driving around in a freaking brand new Ferrari right now. Is what you're acting like.
Right. Exactly. But we said it real clear back in 2012. We said it real clear back in 2012. All the members of the Bilderberg group, they're all guilty of treason, or they're all carrying out war against the people if they're not Americans themselves. And there's only one solution, and there has to be a mass trial.
And you agree with about that? The names you just said, we're in complete agreement about that.
Right, but what I'm saying is that when we say, hey, we're getting a weird feedback. I'm having a hard time hearing you, Aaron.
You get feedback?
Well, it's not. It's like I see you talking, but then it's like there's maybe like a major delay.
Let me look in the chat room and see if anybody. Spartan, thanks for the questions. Kudos to you. He says kudos to you, Chris. Bye. I'll see you, Spartan. Great question.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Let us know how we're coming through if we're echoing. I don't hear anything.
Yeah, and if I'm talking over, it's like because I can't tell when it seems like there's a delay.
Yeah, I think I did. There's a slight delay every now and then. There is.
Okay. So my apologies for any of that. That's why I was saying if I am, and I very well may be talking over people.
No, we've handled it pretty well actually. No, it's been excellent exchange of information about what's going on here. And before as we're we still got about 25 minutes. I wanted to ask your opinion on these newest California fires, Australia fires, and fires all over the world in general. What your take is on that?
Well, I think there's no doubt, and this is what I like to, and I tell when I give legal advice, and that's one thing I do. I've gone into court. I've gotten every single judge recused from a case in Newport News, for pretty cheap for the person who hired me for $500, doing 100 hours of work. And it takes a lot, but to do this sort of thing. But when I'm giving out advice, I say this. I mean, okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Come again with that question. I'm so sorry.
What's your thoughts on the fact there's more fires burning all over the world than ever before? Australia, California.
Okay, that's where I was going with this. The simplest thing. It's always the simplest thing. And what we know is in all of these areas, airplanes are spraying incendiary particles into the atmosphere where these fires are taking place. And so I believe that they are definitely using direct energy weapons, but there can be absolutely no argument against the fact that the geoengineering that is taking place is what is fomenting these fires to the highest level, and including creating drought-like conditions, or chemtrailing for creating or fomenting higher rates of flooding into hurricanes or into floodplains like Houston, Texas, and what's going on in Venice, Italy right now. That's not natural. It's government, military manipulated weather, and I think that the fires are manipulated by not only direct energy weapons, but also incendiary chemtrailing. So, and I think these things are planned, and I think that they're strategically placed. I mean, there's news stories about, flame-throwing drones. So if they exist, and what they're telling us about what's starting these fires are mostly lies, then, and that they have the ability to do this, and that every other time they have a weapon, whether it be biological, conventional, nuclear, or otherwise, they're using it against the public. Why would this be any different when all signs are pointing to government military manipulation and fomenting of these fires and floods and every other thing, including earthquakes and volcanoes?
And also cutting off the water supply to the farmers so that everything turns into a tinderbox. That helps too.
True. Whatever they have to do is what they're going to do. When you have all the tools and you can do it with, you have a dozen different tools you can use to do the same thing, they can use any of the tools. They control all of them, so they can use any of them. And this is not stuff I'm making up. And I wouldn't mind getting into a little bit of mind control stuff, because that stuff has been out for so long. The technology is so it's a I'm trying to look for the right word. Very sophisticated version of ancient technology that goes back to the dawn of humanity.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Right. I mean, it's like
we're seeing it right now. Just not even in the conspiracy, if people want to call it that, still targeted individuals. But now we're seeing this mind control being used via the airwaves right here on these pixels and these screens and these YouTube videos and there's all kinds of different ways to freaking bring MK Ultra to you, and the fact that the bottom line is that the gang stalking and the cyber stalking is getting to points that we've never seen on the internet, where you're seeing people kill off themselves. You're seeing all kinds of people losing their minds, losing everything they have just because of this screen right here. Their whole life becomes the screen, which is a false reality.
Right.
If that makes sense. That's
and we all know that back during the 70s, when they had three TV channels, that they were messaging through sending subliminal messaging through the video on TVs 60 years ago, before all of us on the air were even born. They were doing this stuff. So if they could do it back then, and we have all this technology where, just anybody, it's, this Skype thing, it used to be like a big deal. Like we were like, living in the future or something, but everybody can do this now. And so if they could do that back then, we know what they're doing now. But if somebody who doesn't really, immerse themselves in the technology, in the United States patents of mind control machines, in technology related, media, they could come up with all this stuff on their own, because it really is very simple. They can put messages like voice to skull technology. That's old. That's old. The NSA voice of God technology. That is old stuff, and it's real simple. Through high-pitched frequencies, hidden in white noise, they can send direct messages into your brain and control your mind. And if you don't know that, what do you think they make these patents for? Why are these technologies selling to every government and major corporation around the world for billions and billions of dollars if it's not real.
Right.
So if they're doing that to us, I don't know what would stop any rational person from saying we need to rise up and crush this system and anyone who has anything to do with it in every possible way that is imaginable. So basically, it's not like, oh, well, this guy didn't do anything too bad. It's like, man, get out of the way. And if you stand in our way, we must crush you because this system has to go down. And I want to get back to what y'all were talking about last week at the end of the show with about like Laura Eisenhower and all this other stuff and what they say may or may not be possible. We will never know exactly what they're doing until we control their weapons. It will always be used against us until we control them. It's as simple as that, whether that be the nuclear button or whether that be this voice-to-skull technology or the weather warfare or the biological weapons that they infect people with through so-called vaccinations and whatever else, countless other techniques. Because it's not just vaccinations, it's not just these machines. They can control everybody's mind through just, these child rape networks. These folks, they don't just do it because they like to, bugger children. They do it to set up these mind control slaves.
And Damien just made it back in finally. Damien, are you back with us?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So we're talking about direct energy weapons, mind control, MK Ultra, that type of stuff right now that's going on. Even more hardcore with the rollout of 5G, I would think.
Yeah, smart meters, 5G, all these things are incorporated into our lives now to disrupt us, to bring upon disease, to make it so that we can't sleep. Things, they're just driving us crazy. Some of us.
Well,
some of us are less susceptible to those
things.
things.
Quantify that.
Some of us are less susceptible to those things and have a stronger mind. I'm not vaccinated. I haven't been vaccinated since I was probably 14 years old. So so that doesn't incorporate into my life the way it would some.
I mean, I agree. I think it's everything all in one, and that's why we paint with such a broad stroke at this point, because the system. I mean, I knew 15 years ago when I was an active member of the Democratic Party that the system could not be reformed, that the system had to be brought down. I have a better idea of how to lawfully do that. But here's another thing to think about. They tell us that the plan, they have the plan, and they set the plan in stone. The plan is to have 500,000 human beings on planet Earth. And we now
that's about
500 million.
Okay,
500 million on Earth.
500 million on Earth. Sorry. So,
yeah, it's a whole bunch more. Not really. I mean, 500 million relative to what's on the planet Earth.
Yeah, 500 million is closer to 500,000 than 7 million. But
right. Still, 500. Whittling it down to 500 million is ludicrous. It's taken out 90% of the population.
Right, but that's what they plan to do.
Right. So they got that in stone.
That audience before too.
I have not made it to the Georgia Guidestones, but I plan to.
I have. So I've said 500,000 too, because 500 million just sounds like it's so ludicrous too. 500,000 would be right. It's just ludicrous. Okay. That number's ludicrous in and of itself, and the fact that it's on a monument in Georgia for the world to see, and they're like, okay, and it's heavily guarded. You can't get to it.
Oh no, it's right out in the sticks. You can drive right up to it.
No, but by technology, it's there's cameras on it. You go near it. I mean, you do something to that.
Oh yeah, no, it's been vandalized. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and it's a minuscule percent of the population, And they're telling us, what's the purpose of that? Is it, if the only excuse is it's a kind of like a distasteful joke, or what is it? It seems like a lot of money for somebody to put up and a lot of effort for somebody to put up for no particular reason. And that they have, when one looks into outside of that, with all these guillotines, nuclear weapons, germ warfare, 5G, lethal, silent, lethal, remote killing devices, mini drones, all that stuff. With all that stuff, they seem to really be planning on this. So
slaughter bots.
Yeah, slaughter bots, exactly.
I just showing that like a month ago, and the slaughter bots. I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Take out a whole city. Take out the bad guys. Who determines who the bad guys are?
Right.
The people on the drones. And for 500 million, you can have. Was it 500 million? No, it was 50 million. I want to get the right number, but it's either 5 million or
50 million.
50 million. You can have your whole freaking. You can have a whole plane full of them that can take out a city if they're the bad guys.
Right,
that was insane.
Right. So what I'm saying is, these are facts. Like, I wish to protect animals. I mean, that's one of my goals in life, to have an animal sanctuary and to have a religious community where the rule of law is upheld and the lives of innocent animals and people are protected. But what I'm seeing is, well, what the hell? Like, are we even going to be around for this?
Right.
And if we're going to be around for this, at what point are they going to do this end game? And they have everything laid out for, I write about this in the Militia Handbook. There's about 2 million people with this certain kind of clearance that have, good escape routes to underground cities where they can get pretty much anywhere around the world strategically. And we have about 325 million people who don't have anything.
Right.
Except for maybe some of these millionaires that we're talking about who know what the score is and are going to protect their own butts with all that money that they've gathered for themselves. And so
I read
yeah, I'd like to have this religious community at Raven Rock Complex. That's my property. My ancestors, that's their land. Raven Rock Complex, Site C in Washington County, that's my property. My family members, direct family members, even more direct than the royal families of Europe, which I descend from, they cleared that land and they settled that land where the doomsday vaults and bunkers are for the most powerful nation state in the world now. So that's my property. And we in Pennsylvania right now, we can lawfully, with guns, surround Raven Rock Complex. We can lawfully right now with guns, and I've called for this, and I've done a lot of this stuff myself with very few other people, and nobody has done it for, nobody who's done it maybe once or twice has done it extensively. We could surround the Pentagon with people with automatic, quote unquote, what they call assault rifles, and lawfully do it and get them to stand down. We can lawfully do that. But what do we have? And I think, Eric, we might have an issue with this, but I really did want to get this out there because I didn't when it was brought up last time. We have government agents like the Bundy militia out in the middle of nowhere at a rest area in Oregon in the middle of winter, creating a
I was knee deep in that. You knew that though, huh? That's why you said that. I was knee deep in that. That was
I know that the Bundys.
So it's in.
Yeah,
we spent 20 hours a day doing that.
That was insane. That was like a freaking circus
It was
going
a
on
circus.
there.
It was an absolute circus, but it was intended that way because anybody with a brain who is really wanted to stand up to the government knows that you can go in front of any federal building in Virginia now. When I go and I protest at the Bilderberg group, I'm armed. I'm armed with a gun. And I was armed with a gun in 2012, and I was armed with a gun in 2000. What was it? What was the last Bilderberg in Chantilly, Virginia? 2017.
17.
Yeah, I think it was 17, but I'm not even sure. But I was there, and I had a gun, and I was calling for the execution of these guys lawfully. And we could do that. But instead, you have these moneyed interests and these paid shills like the Bundys. And I just want to say this. Anybody who takes the Bundys seriously after Eamon Bundy got a federal loan for $500,000, you just can't even think anymore. I've never accumulated $500,000 in my entire work career, and I've owned many businesses. And this guy is protesting the government, but yet getting a $500,000 loan from them? Give me a break. In the middle of nowhere, the most worthless activity ever, and they call that the militia. And they're still squeezing that story like it's legitimate. I can tell you right now, I've called for it many times on public radio. Anywhere you could do this.
The whole thing was a huge psyop. It was a psyop.
Absolutely.
So many ways. Damien was heavily involved. Let's get Damien's take real quick here on that.
We were doing that between several of us 24 hours a day. We were on that. I was doing 20 hours a day myself.
I was helping run Pete Sanchilli's station at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It was horrible. Horrible.
Oh, yeah. Pete Santilli. I mean, what an obvious FBI asset that guy is.
Oh yeah.
But let's talk about this. Hey, so why don't we just say, and like I said, I can't even count on two hands the number of times I've gone and held media covered events armed in front of the Richmond Federal Reserve or any other federal building armed, calling for the execution of all government officials. We could surround them and shut them down. I've personally shut down government meetings. I have gone in and given questions at Nuclear Regulatory Commission meetings and DHS meetings that the directors could not answer. And
they can't answer them.
Right. But I'm saying if folks went after the high targets, the government could not operate.
Right. Oh, I completely agree. And to quantify the Santilli thing, that's when I first started broadcasting back in late 2015, 2016. So I was pretty green still. But looking back on it now, how obvious it was from some people on the outside looking in. We wanted to support this, so bad as far as what they were standing for, because we were focusing on the fact that they are shutting off the water on the ranchers, that it is becoming like a tinderbox out there. That
they are stealing land and making it there.
It's owned by the government illegally.
Yes.
Right. And the Bundys, they're among the millionaires that I'm saying they're guilty of treason, and we know what the punishment for treason is. So
now the Hammonds were what
take up the punishment for treason.
The Hammonds, are you familiar with that story? What originally ignited that? What the original protest was for?
Yeah, it wasn't the Bundys who started that. In fact, the Bundys were called by government agents to come and join, unbeknownst to the Bundys. So it was
unbeknownst to the Hammonds.
Unbeknownst to the Bundys as well. They were just called and asked to come in as lead.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was part of the investigation in that.
I don't know what I believe about the Bundys.
What I know is that these guys are paid government agents, and that Eamon Bundy is not disputing that at all. And
what about the jail sentence the guy had? What do you think about that? Did that?
I mean, I think a lot.
I mean, because a lot of the stuff there, we're not even sure that some of these people were even in jails. It wouldn't be hard for them to stage anything.
Do they get? Yeah, they can stage whatever they want. They can stage whatever they want. Was Epstein ever in jail? I don't know. Maybe. I mean,
what do you think, Damien, about that again? Because I know Damien again was heavily involved with that.
And I've heard stories about hazard pay for people to go to jail, where they go like, okay,
right. Well, that's another one. Yep.
You pay 200 grand.
Yeah, because there are so many players in it. It's hard that they made it very, very hard to figure out what the truth was. It's the same thing with Pete. Pete was supposedly in jail, but when everybody saw him, he was fat and looking good.
He was going for a crappy one-bedroom apartment. He had been found out. I mean, he was exposed left and right. It was so obvious what was going on. So he was getting paid. You got to go along with this, Pete. This is what freaking it calls for now. And I think he was probably genuinely surprised that it happened, but freaking feed him well, write a book, chill out in there and get paid for it, Pete. Come out with a book and be a freaking the longest held journalist, which that's a lie. He was not the longest held journalist in American history. Michael Emery was. Who was a real freaking patriot.
What part of the fakery is real and what part of the fakery is the fakery? Because we know that they were blocking and scripting.
It's very
I've been an extra in movies, and I know how to block and script, and that's what they were doing out there. But just bringing it around to another angle of this. Imagine if that group of people had surrounded the Richmond Federal Reserve Bank or the Philadelphia Federal Reserve Bank.
That's great. That's a great point. Like I always thought about that too, is why did they choose that remote location in the middle of nowhere? And only one person of alternative media really had access, had coverage there. There were many independent journalists coming there that couldn't get a signal even, but somehow Pete did. There were so many obvious signs.
Right, a 24-hour signal at that.
He put both people that were nutballs that shouldn't have been there, and a lot of people who freaking were good people behind bars. He just didn't discriminate. Put them all behind bars.
Exactly. So
we were talking about this whole thing the other day as well. And if 1 million people went to Washington D.C. and surrounded all the government buildings, the government would shut down completely.
Right.
We could disassociate, or we could dismember all of the government in one fell swoop if people stood up to them, but they won't.
And what I'm also saying is that we can lawfully surround government buildings with guns here in Virginia. I've done it many times, and we have over and over again. That's all we were exposing that Bundy BS, and also at the same time going, hey, we'll be down at the Federal Reserve Bank here in Richmond with guns. So you guys can stay at a bathroom in the middle of nowhere in Oregon in the middle of the winter and suffer, or you can drive down to the Richmond Federal Reserve Bank, call for the abolition of government instead of taking a paycheck from government like Eamon Bundy did. And we had very few folks showing up. So this radio station reaches a lot of folks. We put out all the plans on that. I put it out for free. This is my intellectual capital, and my intellectual capital, it's all out there for free. Even though my life isn't without the need of money. I'm just saying, if you guys want to do it, it's already out there. Somebody smarter than you has planned this already. The plan's out there, and the plan's not that complicated.
Minute to go, guys. Minute to go, and I want to touch on something real quick here because you mentioned the doomsday bunkers, and I looked it up. So from 2018 to 2019, high-end underground bunkers grew 800%. If that doesn't tell you what's going on. Chris, I want to thank you so much for coming out and bringing that fire to Spitfire. Love it. Damien, thanks for being here too. Everybody in the chat room, thank you. Awesome as always. Great questions. Listener supported. Keep free radio alive. Revolution Radio. Welcome to the resistance. Peace. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Hey, thanks, guys. Yeah, that was good. Hey, that last comment about the 800% increase in luxury underground bunkers. Hey, that makes my idea about executing billionaires for treason. That pretty much is the
we got the commercials are coming on. Thanks again.
All right. All right.